Well, here's a small square of leatherette of the appropriate type. I want to keep the grain running the same way. So I'm just checking to see which way that grain runs. So it runs in that direction. This isn't quite as shiny as that leatherette, but I think we can deal with that. First I've got to see if I can match up that angle somewhat, so I've got to do this more or less by eye. Come round a bit more than that. Right. The grain of this leatherette's not perpendicular to the edge of the body, that's what's thrown me. Runs across it. That looks good. You can't see any of that. Camera in its infinite wisdom decided the battery had gone too flat and just stopped recording. So while I was busy charging up batteries and finding another one to put in there, I got the leatherette patch on the advanced lever. I've put that patch in there. I've cut a patch in there over that screw hole. You'd have to know where to look to see that. Put the back catch cover and so forth on there. So I'm pretty much done at the base of this camera. And at the top of the camera, I'm just about at the point where I can put the rangefinder on there and close things up, I think. So I'll start with that stud there. Now that is the meter comes back against that post. Originally it would have hooked over that post, but that is a long time ago and everything's broken since then, and it's not exactly essential. The rangefinder. I think I need to put the rangefinder on here. Just checking that everything here is snug and ready to go. And I've got my two screws for the rangefinder here and here. I want to put a wipe of molybdenum paste on that cam on the front of the rangefinder where it runs on that little post from the bracket. And normally I want to lock the rangefinder from shifting with a couple of spots of lacquer on here. That'll do. In fact, that's probably too much, but it'll do nicely. Make sure that that's pulled back to the infinity position. Put my rangefinder in place. Make sure that's not behind the arm, that's in front of it. Just drop one screw in position down there and get it started. drop the other screw in from above. See if it fell in the hole the right way up. It did. That's always a bonus. Get that screw started. Check my rangefinder's pulled all the way back. Nip up those two screws. Check the action of the focus, that's smooth. And check the action of the rangefinder out the window. That is pretty good. In fact, I'd be inclined to say that was spot on. I'll check the close focus adjustment on that, and presuming if that's okay, I've been closing up the top of the camera shortly after this. That's all looking very, very good. I had to make a slight adjustment to the horizontal adjustment, but that was all. So I'll just put that film release button on there, the shutter release button on there, put my meter in place there, take my top cover, lower that into place, check my film advance. I'm looking at the frame counter. I might need to adjust that because we've changed the shutter cocking rack. It's not quite moving the frame advance neatly to the next number. So I've got to back that screw out here slightly. So you can't see a damn thing. This screw here, I've got to back it out slightly so it gets pushed further. That doesn't want to move. I wonder if someone's glued that in place. Doesn't look like it. I'm going to put a drop of solvent on there and try that again. That screw is very tight. Let's try that. No, a little bit more yet. That looks better. Film release button's wanting to stick down. Might be fine once the screws are in the top cover. Let's put the screws in and see. Sometimes the top covers get slightly distorted from drop damage, like everything else. And that can be enough to throw the cover one way or the other and mean that things don't move smoothly. The film release button on these things is it's a nasty dog leg construction. The button at the top is not directly in line with the shaft it moves on. So it's a dog leg. Any distortion in there at all, it doesn't want to move. It's a very crappy construction, really. That seems to be working nicely. Both the film release and the shutter release are moving smoothly. And I will get the shutter on before I do anything else. because I may well need to go in and adjust the shutter release action there. So I've got my shutter here, which I prepared earlier. Put that in place, line up the gear where I think it'll go. Let's try cocking that. Didn't quite cock the shutter, I need to be another tooth further advanced, I'd say. Let's try that. Yeah, it certainly cocked at that time. Okay, so that's good. I can put my retaining ring in place and tighten that up. The film release is released before the shutter fires. I've got the back to screw up slightly at the top. Yep. Alright, I know which direction I'm moving. I can be doing that. Let's remove this screw. Remove these two screws. Hold the finger on the meter so it doesn't get upset. This screw here I think I need to back out, I would say 3/4 of a turn. Let's put that back in place. Put the top cover back on. Check the action. Pressing the shutter release very gently. It fired the shutter. It's just released the film release prior to the shutter firing. I think that's close enough. I think if I got that any closer I'd be in danger of getting it to the stage where the shutter released first, and in that instance, if people are very gentle on the shutter release, they'll release the shutter, take their finger back off the release button, and the film advance won't be unlocked and they won't be able to wind on to the next shot unless they press the film release button. Let's try this again. No, I've got to back it up a bit more yet. I can release that film release too early. Another 1/4 of a turn, I think. It's a difficult thing to get quite right. I've gone the wrong way. I've wound up when I should have been winding down. If that screw head's bent. Yeah, I can still get that shutter to release, the film advance to release before the shutter releases. Yeah, okay, the shutter released and the film advance didn't release, so I'm pretty close now. Certainly within a quarter of a turn. Let's back that up. Both actions should happen at the same time. In practice, of course, it's a matter of adjustment. That's good. The film advance is releasing reliably. The shutter is certainly not, the film advance is certainly not being unlocked early. And I'm having no trouble getting the film advance to unlock even with gentle and slow pressure on the shutter release. That's good. The meter dial at the top. Let's get that in place. A quick clean would probably be in order. Well, I'll get this meter dial and sorted out. Come back here where we can see the camera. Come on, video camera, hurry up, we haven't got all day. Right. So this dial goes on here, it only goes on in one position and it's there. We have a wavy washer which needs a little bit of grease to go under there. We have our film speed scale which goes on there. We have the settings scale that goes there. There is another wavy washer that goes here, and there is a small pinhead screw which goes there, and I'll run that screw down and then adjust the position of the film speed scale roughly to where it should be, and I'll test the meter to see if it appears to be any good and adjust it accordingly. And if it doesn't appear to be any good, I'll give up on that very promptly because I can do nothing about it. Now the rewind knob. Here's our rewind knob. We've got a wavy washer which goes in there and a film reminder selector here which goes in there, and a screw holds that all together, and those pieces, one of those was not right. Typically there's a groove in the body of it that wavy washer would sit in, or there would be a corresponding groove in the film reminder dial that the wavy washer sat in, and there was neither. So it might be an oddity that we've sort of fell in between the production runs, or it might not. Let's get this back open. There's our spacer that goes on the top, then our rewind knob, something through the fork of the rewind at the back. Do that up with my fingers. That should be it. And there we should have it. That's our camera. Nice Retina IIIC. Back together. No sign of the problems at the base. All back together. Shutter serviced. Certainly needed it. Shutter cocking rack replaced, because that certainly needed it. And the only thing I've really got to do now is just check that meter. I'll report back. I'm not expecting that to be wonderful. They're usually not. Well, I did try. I've checked that meter. It's the selenium cell's fading. It's not working correctly. The output from a selenium cell is not a straight line. It's like an S-shaped curve. The mechanics of the follower needle are set to match that S-shaped curve. When one of the scales shifts up or down its range, it no longer matches the curve, and that's exactly what's happening. So it reacts to light. You can adjust it so that it'll read correctly at one light level, but at a completely different light level it's going to read high or it's going to read low. And that's exactly what's happened. So it means that the meter's unreliable. You could set it so that it worked well on a sunny day, but that would be pointless because on a sunny day you already know what your exposure value is going to be. So it's just had it basically. The camera's a nice camera. Everything works nicely apart from that. The exposure meter swings nicely in reaction to light. So it makes a fine collectible from that point of view. But if you're wanting to take it, use it to take photos, you'd be best advised to use a handheld meter. Or what you can do these days is you can get an app for your cell phone. They work pretty good. And you've usually got one in your pocket. Anyway, thanks for watching. There's a nice Retina 3 Big C camera. Nice tidy example. That'll be flying home back to the old country. And I'm sure its owner will be very pleased to see it come home.